the more brazen and crass and damaging, including to the American people it is, the more he wants to take it to the next step. Let's start with just the crimes here. Hey, $2 million for a pardon. That is a friggin' bribery, Ben. That is against the law. It is a crime. Now, the Supreme Court, it's an official act when you grant a pardon. So they've said you can't prosecute Trump for it. Aberrant decision, and the damage of this, not just in the individual case, but to the whole confidence of the American people that somehow the justice system is fair. It blows it all out of the water, but it's a flat crime. What the Supreme Court didn't say it's not a crime. They've said you can't prosecute him for it. He is above the law, but it's a flat out bribery. It's no different from other corrupt uses of pardons, for example, say to violate constitutional rights or just to flat out feather your nest. That is a crime. But he does it with impunity, and almost, I think you get the sense of like, yeah, $2 million, here's the going price. He kind of likes it, because doing actual law in the people's interest, that's just for suckers. We haven't written this as much because it's kind of secret. It comes out little by little, but the story of the self-enrichment, not just for him, but for his family, his companies, since in rank violation of anything previous presidents would have done, starting in particular about the beginning of this calendar year, is what would be as damning an indictment as for any president in history, except, for Trump, it's just 1 week work. But you take a step back, you think of all the terrible things and you have to explain them. Nothing to explain here, just flat out. Okay, 2 million. Okay, 10 million. Just step right this way. It couldn't be more corrupt. It couldn't be more unconstitutional.
Very well said. And someone wants to compliment you and say how well said that was, apparently, as well. Everybody, make sure you go check out the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds Substack, and Talking Feds podcast. Check out, that's where I get my legal news. You should get your news from there as well. Harry Littman, everybody. And everybody, hit subscribe here. Help us get to 7 million subscribers on our channel.
Ben, thanks a lot. And my apologies, the phone's supposed to be off, but I'm as befuddled by it as some of the ways of Trump, I have to say.
Thanks, everyone.
People in America are afraid of him. They're afraid to stand up to him, against him, because, and when I did on The View in 2006, I remember Joy Behar saying, you're not going to say that out there, because he had a press conference right before we were live where he had a teenager, Tara O'Connor, who was Miss Teen USA. She had kissed a girl in the village, and they took a picture and put it on all the newspapers. And he made her do a press conference where she apologized. And it looked to me like a pimp and a prostitute. And I said that on the air. And then I proceeded to list facts, not hyperbole, just facts about who he was and what he did. Bankrupt all these times, money from his father, not a self-made man, can't quantify his riches on.
Here is a claim that detonated across cable news and social media within hours of being spoken, live on CNN. A claim that would go on to generate an entire week of debate over medical ethics, political speculation, and the boundaries of responsible commentary about a sitting president's health. Asked by anchor Jake Tapper whether she planned to return to the United States once Trump's presidency ends in January of 2029, Rosie O'Donnell did not simply answer the question. She reframed it entirely. Well, I don't think, Jake, that he is going to survive that long, she said. Welcome to USA Press. Tonight, we are going deep into everything Rosie O'Donnell has exposed and alleged about this administration in just the past several days. The CNN health claim that reignited a decades-long feud, the World Cup corruption scandal she called sickening, and the AI-generated video the White House itself posted mocking her by name. We are also going to be genuinely careful and balanced about the health speculation specifically, because that particular claim deserves scrutiny regardless of who is making it. Let's get into it. Let's start with the CNN interview itself, because the full context matters enormously here. On July 10th, 2026, O'Donnell appeared on The Lead with Jake Tapper, primarily to promote her upcoming one-woman off-Broadway show, Common Knowledge, set to debut at New York City's Darrell Roth Theater on July 22nd. Tapper asked her directly whether she intended to return to America once Trump's second term concluded, presumably in January of 2029. O'Donnell's response went considerably further than the question invited. "I don't think he is going to survive that long," she said, adding, "His demise is visible and apparent to everyone who is not willfully blind." She continued, invoking her own personal frame of reference. "I know there are millions of Americans who have lived through parents and loved ones going through exactly what he's going through." She specifically cited what she characterized as a pattern of verbal errors, including an instance of Trump reportedly confusing Ukrainian President Zelensky with Russian President Putin, and delivered the line that has since become the most quoted phrase from the entire exchange. He makes the kind of mistakes that you would forgive at Thanksgiving dinner.
Throwing obvious shade at Marco Rubio here, saying, there are people in this country who want to keep going and going. Why do we engage in negotiation? It's not out of weakness, but it's out of strength. By the way, I agree with J.D. Vance. However, the negotiations are over. I mean, you did the MOU. The issue right now is that y'all are pretending that the document you signed and that Donald Trump held up in Versailles isn't a real thing. You do an MOU and then you go, aha, now the negotiation begins. No, now the technical implementation of the deal begins, but it's not a new deal. And the issue that so many in the international community see is that you do fake deals. And as you said yesterday when you were on Michael Knowles' show, the purpose of the MOU was to buy time in 60 days to build up the stocks. I mean, maybe quite literally Donald Trump's portfolio trading 21,000 times in 2025, but I think you mean the oil stocks and the weapon stocks, because you said when that goes on, we'll judge how Iran did and we'll determine if we want to go back to war. It's like a test? No, it's a deal. You have to follow the deal or don't do the deal in the first place. Let's watch what JD says. Let's play this clip.
But today, as I sit here, there are people in this country who want you to just keep going and attack the President of the United States for using the leverage that you gave him to engage in negotiation. And why do we engage in negotiation? Because of you, it's not out of weakness, but it's out of strength. And again, I go back to that time that I served in the United States military from 03 to 07. We made a lot of mistakes back then.
And then J.D. Vance says, what I noticed about people who are attacking our administration for negotiating is that they're the very same people who encourage us to drop a few more bombs on places like Afghanistan. By the way, I agree with J.D. Vance here. However, he's acting like they didn't just get us in this catastrophic war in Iran in the first place. Like, we're here because you all invaded Iran and you lost the war. So now you entered into the MOU and now you're going to lecture on what the neocons did, who are horrible people, but you are the neocons. You're the neocons, just like them who lost. You lost. So now you sign the MOU. Here, play this clip.
And what I notice about the people who are attacking the administration for negotiating is that they're the very same people who, for example, encouraged us to just go a little bit further and just drop a few more bombs in places like Afghanistan. But again, if you go back to the mistakes that were made, those very same people, they refuse to say, what were we dropping bombs for? Now, the President of the United States maintains a lot of options today in 2026.
And then J.D. Vance said, but don't worry, everybody. We'll get to the nuclear issue in the future. We're going to start talking about that. I think this is a very revealing. I'll play the clip in a moment. We're going to start talking about that. You realize that under Obama, we didn't just start talking. We stopped talking because we did a deal called the JCPOA. What's notable about the MOU is that the start talking about the nuclear stuff, that only happens when the United States fulfills its obligations under the MOU, unfreezing the funds for Iran. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. making a $300 billion fund available for Iran, which Marco Rubio went to the Middle East and said, we're not even discussing that with Arab nations. Why would we even talk about that? Because it's in the deal. And we heard from the foreign ministers of Arab nations, and they said, yeah, why would we talk about
the Constitution? You know, he's selling things from the office. He's taking money and gifts from other countries, the emoluments clause. He's breaking every law and every rule that we have in our country, and no one seems to be able to stop him.
Can you explain to me, though? I cannot believe that every Republican congressman or woman, every Republican senator is stupid.
Well, they're not stupid, but they're definitely...
But you would never let Grandpa cut the turkey because it might be dangerous. He doesn't know what he's saying. Now, we need to be genuinely careful and honest here, because this is exactly the kind of claim that deserves scrutiny regardless of which side of the political spectrum is making it. O'Donnell offered no medical evidence, no physician's diagnosis, and no direct clinical assessment to support her assertion. She is not a medical doctor, and she explicitly acknowledged this limitation herself, even while making the claim, saying that all the medical doctors could provide accurate opinions about what she believes is happening. An implicit admission that she herself was not qualified to render that diagnosis, even as she proceeded to render it anyway. Jake Tapper, notably, did not challenge her assertions directly during the exchange, which drew its own separate wave of criticism towards CNN for allowing an unsubstantiated health claim about a sitting president to go unchallenged on air. The White House has not issued any official response to these specific comments as of this recording, and no independent medical source has corroborated O'Donnell's characterization. We want to be completely clear about this. Speculating about any public figure's cognitive health without medical evidence is a serious matter, and it deserves exactly this kind of careful framing, no matter who the target is or which political side benefits from the speculation. That said, it's worth noting that O'Donnell's comments did not emerge in a total vacuum, and a fair accounting requires including the broader context she was responding to. The interview came amid a stretch of weeks in which multiple outlets, including some considerably more clinical in tone than O'Donnell's own remarks, had already been examining questions about Trump's public appearances, including widely circulated footage of a scare involving his leg.
Also, a significant issue right now that Trump is getting massive backlash for is the way that he's just rolling out AI in such an unregulated, unfettered fashion, allowing AI companies to run roughshod over the American people. You want a data center? Sure, go ahead, build data centers. Who cares if it sucks out all the electricity and causes everybody's electricity prices to rise? That's the Trump regime policy here, and the people absolutely hate it. The implications of AI, both from the perspective of replacing the jobs of the American people and those data centers that are just destroying local communities, cities. By the way, those data centers suck up more energy than like 2 to 3 Atlantas combined in some of these data centers. I had a great conversation with Senator Bernie Sanders about AI and about the danger that it could cause. And look, there's a way to harness it for good, but we can't just unleash it the way that this regime is doing it, which is going to destroy people's futures and also just make energy incredibly more expensive. So you got people like Trump's crypto czar, David Sachs, saying, according to today's Wall Street Journal, AI-related investment accounts for half of America's GDP growth. A reversal would risk recession. We can't afford to go backwards. Meanwhile, you have Steve Bannon telling ABC that he warned Trump administration's AI agenda could crush the working class, fracture MAGA, and cost the GOP in 26 and 28. He's working to turbocharge the base to revolt against AI in these data centers inside MAGA's fight to stop the AI revolution. And while all of that's happening, and again, while all of this is happening, Donald Trump is hiding. Marjorie Taylor Greene is reposting the following from Ann Vandersteel. It's over. The whole MAGA psyop is over. It's America only, ride or die. Don't slide into my DMs whining about flipping on Trump. He flipped on us. They're calling it a MAGA psyop. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene and former MAGA followers. Marjorie Taylor Greene goes, this sums up almost every call and text message I have received all weekend. No wonder Donald Trump is hiding right now. And by the way, while Donald Trump is hiding right now, just take a look at what's going on in international affairs. So Xi Jinping called Donald Trump yesterday to basically say, do not ever Donald, say that Taiwan does not belong to China. Do you understand? If you want to have any hope of China buying soybeans or China releasing any export controls over the rare earth elements, you do not mention the word Taiwan at all. Do you understand? And Trump's compliant. Trump is supplicant. Trump just does whatever Xi Jinping wants. Trump knows he's been brutally outmaneuvered. And by the way, remember how Trump's like, Xi Jinping promised that he was going to buy 12 million metric tons of soybeans in 2025. Everybody, did I do a good deal? No, you did a freaking terrible deal, because originally they've now bought 0 metric tons of soybeans. Under Biden's last year in 2024, they bought 27 million metric tons of soybeans. So even if you got them to buy 12 million or 12.5 million, it's like 15 million metric tons less than under Biden. And to date, they've only bought 300,000 metric tons. So what the hell are you doing? And they still have export controls on their rare earth elements by stating any company that has a relationship with the United States military must get a special license if they want China's rare earth elements. So no, you've done horrible deals. They have their knee on your neck, and they are making you now, they're putting you in a compromised situation, which is why the new Prime Minister of Japan, Prime Minister Takaishi, the far right-wing Prime Minister, she's asserted that Japan will defend Taiwan if China invades, to which China responded, then we're going to invade Japan. This is all going on while Donald Trump is like hiding out in the White House, and he's making those weird freaking posts, those QAnon posts again. He's posting weird photos of himself, like with his weird arms doing YMCA dances. He's attacking Obama. Oh, Trump can't be bought. He has a more successful executive experience in his pinky toes than Obama has gained in his entire presidency. That's why the establishment fears him. Okay, Donald, okay. You've literally bankrupted almost every company you've touched. You've bankrupted casino after casino. Right now, Trump Media, an utter failure. That's crashing. Your stupid meme stock, stupid stuff. Your meme coin, that's crashed. Anything you touch is an absolute and utter disaster. And again, don't even get me started on the foreign policy stuff right here. I mentioned what China just did to you. Also, a senior advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin basically scoffed at Europe's plan to end the war in Ukraine and said the Kremlin preferred the US plan, which is the Russia plan, when Russia, through Kirill Dmitriev, laundered a 28-point plan for Ukraine to surrender. And Trump's like, that's our plan. That's our plan. He basically just translated it using Google Translate, a Russian plan of surrender, and then gave it to Zelensky and said, you have to agree to this by Thursday. Well, Zelensky didn't agree to it at all. Europe stood strong with Zelensky, and they're fighting back, literally fighting back. Take a look
while
right
boarding
here.
Air Force One, and slowed down video analysis that some medical commentators had characterized as showing potential facial asymmetry. We are not in a position to verify any of those underlying claims either, and we want to be equally cautious about amplifying them without appropriate skepticism. What we can report as fact is that this broader conversation about presidential age and fitness has been circulating across multiple outlets and political commentators for weeks, and O'Donnell's CNN appearance became the most viral single moment within that larger, ongoing debate. Not because her specific claim was uniquely well supported, but because of who she is and the decades of documented history between her and Trump that we've covered extensively on this channel before. It's worth noting that this broader conversation about presidential age and cognitive fitness has become a genuinely bipartisan feature of American political discourse in recent years, not something unique to Trump or invented purely by his critics. The same kind of speculation dogged Joe Biden throughout the final stretch of his presidency, with commentators across the political spectrum raising similar questions about verbal stumbles, public appearances, and overall stamina. That broader context matters because it means O'Donnell's specific claim, however unsubstantiated on its own terms, exists within a much larger pattern of Americans on both sides of the aisle, increasingly scrutinizing the physical and cognitive fitness of leaders well into their 70s and 80s. A legitimate structural conversation about age limits and transparency that gets muddied whenever individual claims outrun the actual available evidence, exactly as we're flagging here. If you appreciate that, we're giving you the full, careful picture here rather than simply amplifying an unverified claim. Hit that like button right now and subscribe to USA Press, because that kind of honesty is exactly what separates real reporting from pure outrage content. Share this with someone who needs the complete, balanced context on this story. It's worth pausing on that specific Zelensky-Putin example O'Donnell cited, because it deserves the same fact-check treatment we're applying to everything else in this report. Verbal mix-ups between world leaders' names are not, on their own, unusual or necessarily indicative of cognitive decline. Public figures speaking extemporaneously across dozens of names and topics daily do occasionally misspeak, and isolated incidents of this kind have occurred across administrations of both parties without necessarily constituting evidence of a broader medical pattern. What would actually be required to substantiate O'Donnell's broader claim is a documented pattern, assessed by qualified medical professionals with appropriate access, rather than a single anecdote pointed to after the fact by a political opponent. Which is precisely the distinction that separates legitimate concern from speculation, regardless of how many individual examples get cited in support of it.
He is scared, he is panicked, and once again he shut down the White House to the press. He kicked all the media out as soon as he got horrible news yesterday that both the James Comey and Letitia James indictment were dismissed by a federal judge after Trump got more bad news about the disastrous direction of the economy, after Donald Trump got more disastrous news about his foreign policy blowing up in his face, his fake ceasefire deal in Gaza exposed as there is no ceasefire, the war in Ukraine raging bigger than it ever was before. You have Russia unleashing more ballistic missiles in Kyiv. You've got Ukraine attacking near Moscow. Ukraine actually showing what strength through actual power means. Donald Trump is showing utter weakness. So let me just show you the moment where on right-wing media, on this MAGA channel right here called RSBN, they basically find out that Trump has shut down the White House to the press. And they're like, I think he was supposed to talk to us, but I guess he's shut it down to the press. Here, play this clip.
It's about to be 5 o'clock on the East Coast. As of right now, it's still closed press at the White House. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap the broadcast at this point. That's the directive I've received. So we're going to do that.
And then before, I guess they fully uncovered that Trump was not going to speak to the press at all because Donald Trump was having a panic attack and he was probably throwing ketchup all around, right? Hide the ketchup, everybody. They were like, we think he's going to sign an executive order about healthcare, and maybe that's what he's going to do, but it's shut off to the press. Here, let's play this other one right here.
We know that the president will be signing executive orders today. We're hearing that it's about healthcare. However, right now, as you see at the bottom, I believe it says, it's just covering the latest, but we do have a closed press currently for that Oval Office meeting for that executive order signing. So that means no press will be airing this live.
So one of the things that went down as well is that Donald Trump, everything he does is just like erratic. It's not planned. It's not well thought out. Well, he was apparently going to announce a healthcare plan, the one that he's been promising is going to happen 2 weeks since his first term. But apparently what he was going to say was that he was thinking about extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies, the Obamacare subsidies, for about 18 months, perhaps 2 years, which, by the way, wouldn't have been a bad thing. Like, that would have been a good thing if he made that announcement. But then all of these MAGA Republicans in the House and Senate revolted, and more of them threatened to resign. They said, you make this announcement, Donald, because we've been out there saying that we're here to kill Obamacare because that's what you said we're going to do, right? That's why the MAGA Republicans shut the government down in the first place. They're like, we're going to resign, and good luck. You're going to have Speaker Hakeem Jeffries. So then Donald Trump pulled back the announcement and then shut it down to the press. So here's what happened on CNN, where they're told he's going to go and speak to the press, right? He's going to go and announce this plan, this executive order that maybe would have extended the Obamacare subsidies. By the way, it still would have had to have been passed by Congress, but this would have been a good development. And then all of a sudden they're like, nope, he's actually canceled it. This is how frantic it is right now in the White House. Let's play this clip right here.
We're learning President Trump is planning to unveil a new health care proposal. And at this point, we're still waiting to know exactly what's in it, but we're told it could include a temporary extension of the Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies, which are due to expire at the end of the year. They were at the center of the government shutdown. However, the subsidies could come with some fresh guardrails that could include new income limits and a requirement that everyone pay some form of a premium. Now, we should note that if the subsidies do expire, millions of Americans are expected to see their premiums more than double next year. Zach Cooper is joining us now. He's a professor of health policy at Yale University. Zach, thanks for being here. As I noted, we are very much still waiting for specifics here.
He's a very unwell man.
Yeah, I agree.
In many ways, physically and mentally. The president's saying that I'm a threat to humanity.
Yeah.
That's the President of the United States
saying that. Yeah.
Now, when our feud started some 20-something years ago, he was a joke of a reality show guy that nobody respected or took seriously. He is a very unwell man.
Yeah, I agree.
In many ways, physically and mentally.
Now let's move to something O'Donnell said in that exact same interview that received far less attention but deserves real scrutiny. Because unlike the health speculation, this claim connects directly to a documented pattern we have tracked repeatedly on this channel. Discussing why she believes urgency around opposing this administration is justified, O'Donnell said, "I think my displeasure with the Democratic Party's attack of him and the urgency by which they need to break the glass in case of emergency. It is an emergency. It's not like fascism might come here. Fascism has already arrived." That is a considerably weightier and more politically loaded claim than the health speculation, and reasonable people can and do disagree sharply about whether it's an accurate characterization or hyperbole. But unlike the medical claim, it is at least a political argument rather than a diagnosis, and it deserves to be evaluated on those terms rather than dismissed as simply more of the same. It's also worth including some of the sharper criticism O'Donnell's CNN appearance generated, because a balanced report has to include it. One widely circulated social media post pointed out what its author characterized as a conflict of interest in the booking itself, noting that Tapper is very close with Jimmy Kimmel, and that Kimmel had separately tapped O'Donnell to serve as a guest host on his own show for a week beginning August 17th, while he takes what the post's author sarcastically called an obnoxiously long 2-month vacation. Another post characterized the entire segment dismissively, listing what its author saw as a pattern of unfounded claims O'Donnell has made over time. That the 2024 election was rigged, that Elon Musk was somehow involved, that Trump assassination attempts were staged, and that Trump intends to cancel future elections, before concluding sarcastically that Tapper had simply had hair on to discuss how Trump is mentally unwell. We're including that specific counter-narrative in full because fairness requires it. Critics of O'Donnell have built a case that she has a documented pattern of making sweeping, unverified claims, and her CNN appearance, whatever its merits on this particular occasion, fits a recognizable pattern her detractors have been cataloging for some time. It's worth briefly fact-checking one more claim O'Donnell made in a separate, related interview around this same period, because consistency requires we apply the same scrutiny throughout. Speaking to page 6 about her decision to remain in Ireland, O'Donnell claimed that Trump's political support had diminished significantly since her departure, citing as evidence how empty his state fair was during a recent public appearance.
Donald Trump's secret pardon scam has been uncovered, although lawyers who are practicing in the criminal defense bar seem to know that it ain't really a secret there. You had lots of people saying, they didn't want to be named directly in a lot of these articles from The Atlantic and others that were publishing about this, that it's a well-known secret, so not really a secret at all. It's general knowledge, as people were telling The Atlantic. In our practice, $2 million, you can have a pardon, one prominent white-collar defense attorney has told The Atlantic. Here's the story in The Atlantic. Among the names under consideration for a proposed 250 pardons for 250 years initiative are fugitive Joe Low, who ran that massive scam with the fund and was spending hundreds of millions of dollars from one of these foreign wealth funds. He's been in hiding. He's accused of masterminding the multi-billion-dollar 1MDB fraud. Fugees rapper Praz Mikel, who was convicted in a related foreign influence case, basically laundering Jolo's money in the election process. One Taste co-founder Nicole Daydon, recently sentenced in a forced label conspiracy case. So turning the 250th into like an auction, like a bonanza, and just do the math of 250 pardons times about $2 million. And I'm sure that number may go $6 million or $10 million. And, and at some point, the level of greed, the level of corruption from this Trump regime is so utterly despicable. And it's at such a grand scale. You go back to J.D. Vance's statement where J.D. Vance was telling on himself in this regime. If we did the Watergate, a Watergate today wouldn't make it past half of a 12-hour news cycle, is what J.D. Vance said. I mean, look at this for these graphs. posted by Steve Ratner from a Reuters article that just dropped right here. The number of financial side deals the Trump family is running is so shockingly it can be hard to track.
He is a cruel, criminal, and mentally unstable man. And Duty to Warn was a book that came out when he was first in office. Psychiatrists across the country who don't ever really diagnose people that they don't serve personally came together and made a book, Duty to Warn, to tell the world what a narcissistic, mentally ill person.
We were not able to independently verify the specific attendance figures she referenced, and attendance at any single public event is, on its own, a notoriously unreliable indicator of broader political support, subject to weather, scheduling, local factors, and countless variables unrelated to national approval. This is exactly the kind of casual, unverified claim that deserves the same skeptical treatment as the health speculation, even though it received far less attention in the broader news cycle. Let's turn now to a story where O'Donnell's criticism rests on considerably more solid, documented ground, the World Cup controversy, because this is a genuine, verifiable sequence of events rather than speculation. O'Donnell spoke to Variety, again primarily to promote common knowledge, and the conversation turned to Trump's direct intervention in the actual World Cup tournament, a real, documented episode that deserves to be understood in full. Trump, as president of one of the host nations for this year's tournament, personally lobbied FIFA President Gianni Infantino to reverse a red card issued against American player Fowler and Balogun, a decision that would have kept the team's best player out of their round of 16 knockout match against Belgium. The intervention succeeded. The red card was rescinded, marking, according to Variety's own reporting, the first time such a ruling had been reversed since 1962. It is worth noting that Infantino had separately gifted Trump FIFA's inaugural Peace Prize only months earlier, an award that critics characterized at the time as a transparent effort to curry favor with the sitting president of a host nation ahead of the tournament. O'Donnell's reaction to this entire episode was genuine and pointed, "I was horrified. I'm horrified that he is able to get away with pretty much everything, and it's sickening." She specifically criticized the lack of institutional pushback, saying, "The fact that Balogun did not say, 'I will not play this game,' and the fact that the coach of the American team did not say, 'This is not how we win,' and that everyone was just like, 'Well, whatever!'" Her broader point deserves real consideration on its own merits, separate from any of her more speculative claims. A sitting president personally intervening in the officiating of an international sporting tournament, reversing a decision that had not been overturned in over 6 decades, represents a genuine and documented instance of exactly the kind of institutional norm breaking we have tracked across this entire administration.
This level of gasoline at the pump while something's going on with the market to manipulate it so it's lower right now than it was under former President Biden in like 2023 and 2024 when the Strait of Hormuz was open, but the refiners see what's happening. That's why I keep on saying, let's focus on the receipts here. So when something happens, we're not like, where did that come from? I'm telling you what's happening right now. Watch what JD Vance said. Let's play it.
Thing that matters to the American people. We dropped some bombs a couple of days ago. You know why? Because the Iranians were shooting at commercial ships. So we dropped some bombs, we applied some leverage, and we've had free commercial transit for the last 3 days.
Then JD Vance said, look, and here's what we're going to be doing. If the Iranians try to rebuild the nuclear program, we've got options. If Iranians try to threaten their neighbors, we've got options. But what we must never do is drop bombs just for the sake of dropping bombs. I agree that, JD Vance, but that's not what you did before. You dropped bombs for the sake of dropping bombs on Iran because y'all went with Netanyahu to engage in this catastrophic war in the first place. And then JD Vance is like, Trump will ask you to go to war, yes. But when he asks you, he'll tell you exactly what you're going for. No, he didn't even tell anybody what we were going for last time. Oh yeah, he said that we were going to go there for regime change and replace the Ayatollah, and that he and Netanyahu would be viewed as conquering heroes. This is what JD Vance said moments ago. Let's play it.
If the Iranians try to rebuild the nuclear program, the president's got options, again, because of you. If the Iranians try to threaten their neighbors or fund terrorism, we've got options, again, because of you. But what we must never do is drop bombs just for the sake of dropping bombs. And that is what the president will never ask you to do. He'll ask you to go to war, yes, but when he asks you to go to war, he'll tell you exactly what you're going for. And I think that is what you should expect out of your political leadership.
And then J.D. Vance lies and said the Iranians are further away from developing a nuclear bomb than they've ever been. Just making up numbers. While focus on what's happening in the Strait. They don't want you to focus on that. Here, play this clip of J.D.
And now, and trust me, I know because I look at the intelligence estimates, if you look at what our own intelligence says about their nuclear program, they are further away from developing a nuclear bomb than they have ever been since basically the last 20 or 30 years. And that is because of you and because of your hard work.
And then J.D. Vance throwing...
Well, he is a cruel, criminal, and mentally unstable man. And Duty to Warn was a book that came out when he was first in office. Psychiatrists across the country who don't ever really diagnose people that they don't serve personally came together and made a book, Duty to Warn, to tell the world what a narcissistic, mentally ill person he is.
Not a matter of opinion or speculation, but a verified sequence of events with real consequences for the integrity of the tournament. It's worth digging a bit deeper into the FIFA Peace Prize details specifically, because the timeline surrounding it strengthens rather than weakens the corruption concerns O'Donnell and others raised about the entire episode. FIFA created the award as a brand new honor, specifically for this occasion, meaning there was no established precedent or independent selection criteria to evaluate against. The prize appears to have been invented largely for the purpose of honoring Trump specifically, only months before the tournament in which his own country's team would benefit directly from an unprecedented officiating reversal. That Infantino personally approved. That sequence: invent an award, present it to a sitting head of a host nation, and then personally intervene on behalf of that same nation's team during the actual tournament, is precisely the kind of pattern that international sports governance watchdogs have flagged as a serious integrity concern, independent of anything O'Donnell herself said about it. And here is where O'Donnell delivered what might be the single most pointed piece of irony in this entire story, connecting directly back to Trump's own well-documented citizenship threat against her, which we covered extensively in an earlier episode on this channel. She pointed out that Balogun himself was born in Brooklyn, New York, to Nigerian parents who were living in London at the time, making him, under long-standing American constitutional law, a birthright citizen. The Balogun meddling is particularly hypocritical, Variety's own reporting noted, considering that Trump had both attempted to overturn birthright citizenship entirely through executive order, a move that was struck down by the Supreme Court, while simultaneously having personally threatened, in a fit of rage the previous summer, to revoke O'Donnell's own birthright citizenship. O'Donnell herself addressed this directly and with real legal precision. I will never give up my American citizenship, and that's the only way it can be taken from you if you're an American citizen, no matter what the current president says.
I'm sorry, this has actually been, sorry, Zach, we're getting breaking news while I'm talking to you. I have learned that the White House has postponed its expected unveiling of this new healthcare proposal. It was expected to be unveiled today. We'll learn more, hopefully, about that in the coming moments. But again, this is postponed, but we can talk about the ideas here.
All right. Now, while Donald Trump is hiding in the Oval Office yesterday, he then announced late last night that he's going to be leaving Washington, D.C. tonight. Right. So yesterday he shuts down the Oval Office, kicks out the press. He's frantic, probably throwing ketchup. I don't know that for a fact, but probably. I don't know. But then he announces late last night that tonight he's leaving. He will be in Florida on the taxpayer dime. He'll be golfing. Who knows? Maybe he'll do some Great Gatsby themed parties. Maybe there will be half naked women dancing in martini glasses. Who knows? Maybe the slogan will be a little party, never killed nobody. Maybe some synchronized swimming. You know, they could flaunt their money while Donald Trump makes the American people suffer. And suffer indeed is what's happening in the United States. Let me just show you what's going down. Headlines from the past 24 hours from the Washington Post. More Americans are getting their power shut off as unpaid bills pile up. Average electricity costs have risen 11% since January, more than 3 times the rate of inflation. For the first time, we're behind on all our utilities, one Ohioan said. But that's probably what all Americans are saying right now, because those electricity prices are so freaking expensive right now. I know when I get them, because I had them on direct pay, that every time I get them, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? Late car payments are piling up at record levels as more drivers face delinquency. How about this from the Texas Manufacturing Outlook survey from the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas? We don't know if it's the shutdown or just that demand has dropped, but our orders, manufacturing, construction, in general, have dropped in half. Or how about this? Exclusive from Reuters. Americans waiting for Obamacare subsidy delay or drop their health insurance. So because Congress has not extended the Affordable Care Act subsidies, people are now losing their Obamacare plans because people aren't renewing. They're not able to purchase their insurance because the prices are going up. So officials from several USA states say Americans relying on subsidies to afford Obamacare health insurance are holding off on enrolling as they face 2026 premium hikes that could more than double, with one state seeing enrollment drag as much as 33%. That's covered California. Enrollment is down 33% from the sign-up period last year. Pennsylvania has seen a 12% decrease in new enrollees from 2025 to 2026. Similar drop-offs in Virginia, Maryland, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. In Washington state, we've seen a drop-off of about 21% as well. And of course, we don't get red state data because they don't share it and they don't care about their people getting kicked off of health insurance. How about this stat right here as well, or this headline from KPBS? How fear of Trump's immigration blitz is changing life in California farm towns. Hint, hint, he's killing California farms, which, by the way, you could be like, oh, Donald Trump is owning the libs in California. First off, the farm towns tend to actually lean more right-wing if in the central-ish, kind of northern-ish California area. Those are the areas that actually tend to vote for Trump. And guess where the produce goes? To the rest of the country. You're screwing everybody, and this is further increasing, making prices higher, harming the American consumer, and just harming American business. Like, what are we doing here? People don't want to shop or go out to eat. They're scared to come out because of the color of their skin.
People saying, I'm canceling my trip to Disney, I'm canceling my Hulu, my Disney Plus. $4 billion in 4 days. Bravo, America. And this is how much power we have. And don't let them tell you we...
That is, in fact, an accurate statement of settled constitutional law under the 1967 Supreme Court ruling in Afroyim v. Rusk, which we detailed extensively in our earlier report on this exact citizenship threat. A natural-born citizen can only lose their citizenship through voluntary relinquishment, not presidential decree. It's worth including one more substantive piece of O'Donnell's Variety commentary, because it represents a genuinely coherent political argument rather than personal insult, and deserves to be evaluated as such. Discussing the broader arc of Trump's public career, she said, he was allowed to go on a show that was a reality show, and it was sold as fact when it was in fact fiction. Because he was broke. One of the many times that he was broke. And this is a man who has been a failure at everything he's ever tried. And he is mediocre beyond mediocre. And the fact that he is running our nation is an abomination. That specific argument, that Trump's public image as a successful businessman was substantially manufactured through television production rather than reflecting his actual documented financial history, is not new to this channel. We've covered the real, independently verified New York Times investigation into Fred Trump's quote, roughly $400 million transfer to his son in our earlier report on Mary Trump's family history commentary. O'Donnell's framing here tracks closely with that same well-documented financial record, even though her delivery leans considerably more toward personal condemnation than careful financial analysis. Now let's talk about the AI video, because this connects directly to the pattern of unhinged personal targeting we have documented repeatedly on this channel.
Once again, blocked a ship trying to traverse the Strait of Hormuz using the unauthorized route. Trump and J.D. Vance have been bragging, we've opened up our own route in the Strait of Hormuz that we control. The IRGC released a video saying, no, you don't. And by the way, you may want to take a look at some of the satellite footage because all of the tankers right now, the VLCCs, they're mostly all using the IRGC route. And in terms of the transponders on these tankers on the other route, You ain't seeing any ships traversing over there. So Iran's IRGC grounded a foreign container ship in the Strait of Hormuz trying to use a U.S. lane moments ago. Iran says it repeatedly warned captains, ship owners, and officials of shipping companies around the world that any entry or exit through routes other than the route of authority in the Persian Gulf could lead to irreparable incidents. And I'll show you right here because the IRGC just released footage of the foreign cargo ship stuck in the Strait of Hormuz after attempting to transit using a U.S. suggested route this morning, calling it an incident even worse than sinking. Per the Iranian broadcast network, here's what they just showed moments ago. Let's play it.
شناوری که میخواست قوانین تنگه هرمز را دور بزند ولی عاقبت خوشی نیافت. اسناک است.
وای وای پره های موتور کشتی رو
وقتی پره های پروانه کشتی این گونه از سطح دریا بیرون بزند یعنی اتفاقی بدتر از غرق شدن رخ داده.
So as the Trump regime has been panicking, they sent J.D. Vance to act like a tough guy in front of members of our military who were just incredibly bored and disengaged by this terrible speech. J.D. Vance was given the speech and he was like, do you all know we dropped bombs a couple of days ago on Iran? You know why? Because Iran was shooting at commercial ships that were using our route. And now there's complete transit through the Strait of Hormuz, not using the IRGC route, using our route. We did it, mission accomplished. That's not what's happening. And I implore everybody to look at the crack spreads right now. I know I may sound like a broken record about this, but the crack spreads are the delta or the difference between the crude prices that you see, which are below $70 a barrel, right? That's the WTI and Brent crude. But look at what the refiners are charging because our strategic reserves are hitting technical or functional tank bottom. And so the refiners see, wait a minute.
It's worse every day. I feel like we're in a dystopian nightmare and no one is doing anything about it. I don't understand how he's able to get away with the things he gets away with, breaking the law, the emoluments clause, taking bribes, blackmailing people. He's a criminal con man. And if you grew up in New York, as I did, you knew this your whole life. We watched his planes get repossessed off the runway at LaGuardia. We watched him try to sell steaks in Cologne and a fake university, steal money from charities that his family can't even have a charity anymore in New York City, in the New York State, because they had stolen money from kids' cancer charities. There's no way you can look at the facts about this man and believe in him still. You have to have willful blindness. It's worse every day.
Just last week, Trump posted an AI-generated video to Truth Social, depicting himself dressed in a white lab coat and stethoscope, portraying a fictional doctor diagnosing a roster of celebrities, O'Donnell specifically named among them, with what the video called Trump derangement syndrome, complete with a fabricated treatment plan for those supposedly suffering from it. The White House's own official account shared the video widely. O'Donnell's response was pointed and, frankly, difficult to argue with on its own logical terms. She said the video itself was proof that the president remains, in her words, obsessed with her. It's worth noting that O'Donnell was not the only public figure named in Trump's AI-generated diagnosis video, which matters for understanding the full scope of what this specific piece of content actually represented. The video reportedly featured Trump's fictional doctor character delivering diagnoses to a roster of other celebrities as well, meaning this was not a single, isolated attack targeting O'Donnell specifically, but a broader piece of content designed to mock an entire category of the president's critics simultaneously, using the same fictional framing device across multiple named individuals. That detail actually reinforces rather than undermines O'Donnell's specific point about being a repeated, recurring target. She has now appeared by name in this kind of official White House amplified mockery on multiple, separate occasions across nearly 2 years, a pattern of sustained personal attention from the highest office in the country that few other private citizens have experienced with this degree of consistency. Sit with the actual mechanics of what happened here for a moment. A sitting president, using the official communications apparatus of the United States government, personally created and disseminated a fictional medical satire targeting named private citizens by name, mocking their political opposition to him as a diagnosable mental illness. Whatever you think of O'Donnell's own health claims about Trump, it is worth noting the specific asymmetry. Trump's video was an elaborate
about $300 billion funds. We don't know anything about that because it's in the deal. And everybody in the Trump regime said the Arab nations would be paying for it. And then Netanyahu would have to leave southern Lebanon. When those conditions are met, which Iran realizes that y'all aren't going to meet, then you get to discuss the nuclear stuff, the nuclear information. So that doesn't happen until the other stuff is fulfilled. That's the way the agreement that you all signed is structured. If you like it, if you don't like it, your feelings are not really what's at issue here. It's what the MOU says. Here, let's play this clip.
And that's what they're focused on. And then, we're going to, obviously, we're worried about the nuclear issue. We're going to start talking about that. So right now, the talks are going well. It's still pretty early, but talks are going well.
When you spoke at the
Now, while that's going on, Donald Trump is heading to this speech in North Dakota at the Teddy Roosevelt Presidential Center, and Trump is arriving in his choo-choo train. This is him arriving in his choo-choo train, everybody. Play this clip. And he's then having horses escort his motorcade so he can feel tough. Here, play this clip. And then Donald Trump is having a conversation with AI President Teddy Roosevelt that Trump seems to think is real. And it seems that AI Teddy Roosevelt is trolling Donald Trump because Trump's like, do you think the Panama Canal is your greatest achievement? And AI Teddy Roosevelt is like, the job of a president is beyond a single thing like that. You must care about the people, like stuff that Donald Trump doesn't do at all. Here, play this clip.
Do you consider the Panama Canal your greatest achievement?
Well. Right then, yes.
Good answer.
The canal stands as one of my proudest battles, no question. But greatness is a strange thing. It isn't always the biggest or boldest job that matters most. The Panama Canal showed what America could achieve if we held steady and acted fast when the world dragged its feet. That said, I measure my greatest work by the lives improved. Parks set aside, food and drugs made safe, the square deal given to all, not just to a few. Still, when I stood in the mud watching those steam shovels, knowing ships would pass through, changing the world's map forever, I felt I'd left a mark that would last.
Okay, you did. Thank you.
And here's more of Donald Trump telling AI Roosevelt that it's an honor to be with him, that it's such an honor to be with you. Here, play this clip.
Every day a president faces storms most people never see. Keep your nerve and remember the nation comes first, you get through. I know you know that feeling yourself.
Well, I appreciate those words. Those words are fantastic.
Trump so much for this country that you guys, the mass media is to blame, to equate him and Hillary Clinton and act as though they were the same, to equate Hunter Biden and the billion-dollar criminal crime family Trumps is ridiculous. And you guys never did a Google search to say he was bankrupt 6 times. So when I said it on the
produced piece of official government-amplified content mocking his critics as mentally unwell, while O'Donnell's comments were unscripted remarks in a single interview. A distinction that matters when evaluating which side of this exchange actually deployed more institutional resources toward personal medical mockery. Let's also cover O'Donnell's more recent, considerably more sober commentary, because it deserves inclusion for balance. Speaking with author Marianne Williamson in an interview roughly 3 weeks before her CNN appearance, O'Donnell offered an assessment that reads less like personal animus and more like genuine political analysis. People are inexplicably afraid of him and his power, but he is one of the most mediocre men ever in public office. She continued with a specific, pointed observation about the psychology of the people surrounding him. The fact that one mediocre man can take down this amazing nation with a group of sycophants behind him who will pretend he's not sleeping during a government meeting while standing 12 inches from his face. That specific framing, focusing on the behavior and complicity of Trump's own staff and allies rather than simply attacking Trump himself, represents a genuinely different, arguably more substantive line of criticism than her later CNN health remarks, and it deserves to be evaluated on its own terms as political commentary rather than medical speculation. It's also worth noting, in the interest of complete fairness, that O'Donnell herself has acknowledged a certain irony in her own public persona regarding this entire saga. During that same Williamson interview, she admitted, "I don't want to have the stress and anxiety associated with the constant barrage of him." An admission that sits in some tension with her own documented, near-constant stream of social media commentary about Trump. Breitbart's own coverage of the interview pointedly noted that O'Donnell has quietly returned to the US on multiple occasions, despite having vowed publicly that she would not, and that during this specific interview, she revealed she was, at that moment, still physically in New York, not in Ireland, where she has publicly stated her family relocated. That detail matters for a fully honest accounting. O'Donnell's own public statements about her relationship to the country she has said she left have not always been perfectly consistent, and that inconsistency is a fair point for critics to raise, separate from whatever merit exists in her broader political criticism. Let me give you my full analysis of what's actually happening across all three of these stories, because I think there's a meaningful distinction to draw between them that a genuinely careful news operation has to make explicit. The World Cup story is the strongest of the three by a wide margin, because it rests entirely on documented, verifiable fact. Trump did personally lobby FIFA. The red card reversal did happen, and it was the first such reversal since 1962. That is not speculation. That is reporting.
It can be hard to track, but take a look at Trump's crypto ventures alone. On the crypto venture side, the Trump organization made $2.29 billion on crypto alone, while his investors lost $2.28 billion. How about World Liberty Financial, another Trump Witkoff endeavor? This crypto venture that also featured Don Jr., Eric, Witkoff's sons, Zach and Alex Witkoff, netted a fortune for both families of $1.1 billion, while investors lost 76% of the money that they put in. But now you take 250 pardons, multiply that by $10 million each, and can this pardon scam, racket, whatever you want to call it, be even making more money for the Trump family than these crypto scams right here? And as Hillary Clinton posted, look at these headlines that are just from the past 24 hours. Trump is using $500 million for a no-bid contract to build the White House ballroom. Yeah, Trump isn't having his rich friends pay for it. He's having us pay for it. We're holding the bag. The way Donald Trump's investors lost all that money while he gained all that money in the zero-sum game, that's how the American people have been treated right now. What they call euphemistically the K-shaped economy, meaning the rich, they've gotten much richer. The rest of America is in a Great Depression right now. How about this story? Trump bought as much as $5 million in Axon stock right before ICE sought $220 million in a taser deal, putting $220 million into Axon and causing that stock to surge right there. I want to bring in Harry Littman, Talking Fed's YouTube channel, former top prosecutor out of the Western District of Pennsylvania. He was the United States attorney there, top federal prosecutor out of Main Justice in Washington, D.C. Harry, great to see you here. I mean, the fact that amongst criminal defense lawyers, that it just is, we just got to pay $2 million, we get a pardon, and they talk about it like that. And it's a well-known thing. It's it's a secret, I guess, to the rest of everybody. Be like, yeah, we all do that. $2 to $6 million, you get your pardon, boom, then you get out. What do you make of it all?
It's breathtaking. As always, Trump takes the next step. So he did all these things with pardons dating to Trump 1.0 that were as corrupt, as nasty, as self-serving, as lining his own pockets, really, as anything. The only reason it's not the very top of the charts for his biggest abuses is because there is the pardon power, but that doesn't mean you can use it anyway. In fact, I'll get back to that in a moment. And so now the lesson learned is, yeah, we've all but announced that we are breaking the law and not worried about it. So what should we do? Take that next step and do it whole hog. And on these, not just lining his own pockets, but that of his family, that of his industries, the unreal incidents of completely corrupt transactions. They would be corrupt on the market. This purchase of stock just before ICE makes its move. Completely improper, complete derogation of the idea of taking care that the people's interests are well served.
You know, he has been a mystery to me from the moment I was conscious of him as a young child, when all his planes were getting repossessed off the runways at LaGuardia, when he was trying to sell steaks and cologne. And, you know, because, you know, Warren Buffett always does that, right? All the billionaires do that. No, he's the only one because he's a con man. That's the bottom line.
Harder for platforms to moderate or label, given the ambiguity around satire, parody, and official government speech that this kind of content deliberately exploits. Here is the deeper truth sitting underneath everything we've covered tonight, and it requires holding two things in mind simultaneously, which is exactly the kind of nuance this story actually deserves. Rosie O'Donnell's documented, verifiable criticisms of this administration, the World Cup intervention, the citizenship threats, the pattern of institutional norm breaking, are genuinely substantive and worth taking seriously on their own factual merits. Her unverified health speculation about Trump is a separate matter entirely, one that deserves exactly the same skepticism responsible journalism should apply to any unsubstantiated medical claim about any public figure, and we are not going to pretend otherwise, simply because the underlying feud between these two people has run for nearly 2 decades. Both things can be true at once. An administration can genuinely engage in documented, verifiable institutional overreach, and a specific critic of that administration can simultaneously make claims that outrun the actual available evidence. Treating both of those realities honestly, rather than picking whichever one serves a predetermined narrative, is the entire point of what we try to do on this channel. This is USA Press. If tonight's deep dive gave you the full, carefully balanced picture on this fast-moving story, hit that like button right now. It costs you 1 second, and it puts this kind of genuinely careful reporting in front of thousands more people who need it, especially on a story this easy to sensationalize in either direction depending on which outlet you happen to be watching. Subscribe to USA Press and turn on notifications, because between the World Cup fallout, O'Donnell's upcoming Kimmel guest hosting stint, and whatever comes next in this fast-moving feud, we are nowhere close to finished covering it. Drop a comment and tell us. Do you think the World Cup intervention or the AI derangement video is the more serious, better documented story here? And where do you personally draw the line on unverified health speculation about public figures, regardless of who's making the claim? We want to hear where you land, honestly, on all sides of this one. Stay sharp, stay informed, and remember, the strongest arguments never need to borrow credibility from the weakest ones.